Okay. Okay. Okay, everybody. If I can get everybody's attention. Hello, everybody. That's back from the days of being caucus chairman. The whistle worked. Okay, I got everybody's attention. Of course, our numbers were much smaller there, and it was a lot easier for everybody to hear us. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Health and Human Services Committee to order. And thank you to all my members, if you weren't already here, for coming in for this meeting. I want to tell everybody we will be meeting again on Thursday. We have bills to hear and some study committee requests, so we will be meeting on Thursday, 2 o'clock, and I think we're going to be in room 403 in the Capitol because apparently this one is not open. So please, everybody, check your schedules to make sure where we will be meeting and that to members of the audience. First, let me get underway. Chairman Unterman has a committee meeting going on, which I have to go to later, but let her go first. Let's call Senate Bill 4. This was the bill that we passed out, and it was recommitted to health, and there have been some changes, mainly in how the committee was made up, and I will let Senator Unterman go from there.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chairman. I appreciate you hearing this bill. This is the substitute to Senate Bill 4, and I think we already went over this bill, and it went through the committee, and there was some additional changes to the substitute. This is LC 37243-7S. And I believe some more members were added to the substitute. I'm not sure how many members are on it now. When I last looked at it, it was 19. So
I think there's 21, maybe, Senator. Are you
21.
working off? Okay? You're working off LC 3724440S.
No, 2437S. So I don't have the last copy.
Okay,
evidently.
I think. Okay,
Sorry.
Senator Unterman, the only changes
Y'all
were,
get to see how sausage is made?
Senator Unterman,
Yes.
I think what happens, these were flying in late this
that's fine.
afternoon. I think the only changes
21.
as Lynn in Legislative Council cleaned up some language, there's no major changes.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
So there's 21 members. I think that's the only substantive change. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's it.
Okay.
It basically, what it did is made the committee made up of 3 members from the House, 3 members from the Senate, and the governor can pick 3 members. He can pick them at random from the community, or they have created a advisory council. He can pick them from the advisory council. That's the change.
The only thing I see, there's 3 psychiatrists on it. 1 psychologist, 1 social worker, 1 LPC. So 3 psychiatrists outnumber all the others.
I think, Senator, that must have been because they are taking the place of running in the hospitals, the in-house hospitals and the
Yes,
ones
got
on the outside.
acute, private, and private practice.
Right. I think that's a change. Is that any questions for the senator? No
Ought to
question?
be in good mental health standing after this is done next year. All those psychiatrists. Maybe they can figure us out, you think?
No. Especially not in the waning days of the session. I've got a motion do pass and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Everyone in the favor of the passage to the substitute to Senate Bill 4, and that is LC 3724440S, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No, the ayes have it, Senator. Thank you very much. Okay, and next, let's do Senate Bill 40.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I bring before you a substitute to Senate Bill 40 that went through a very thorough vetting in the Senate. And it came to me because of my own local police departments in Gwinnett County. And we have several city, county, and a sheriff's office, and we're a county of 1 million people. And one of the main problems, especially with the opioid, heroin addiction, and all the infrastructure changes that we've had in the mental health system, that unfortunately we have a lot of people in dire need with mental health services on the streets now. And it's really beginning to show up in the local government setting, because those closest to it are the ones that are having to deal with the problems. And that's exactly how the problem came to me last year, of the ability to apprehend and transport these folks. And I have been dealing in the last couple of years with DBHDD. Evidently, my name is out there on the street that people know to call me, because I've gotten several instances of where, unfortunately, people are in dire straits and their last resort is suicide, and they're jumping off of bridges. I had one on, I think it was Labor Day. I know it was on Labor Day, out here at the Atlanta airport on the bridge going over to the airport. But originally, the bill came to me as a suggestion from Gwinnett County in the urban settings of a case where a man was jumping off a bridge at Jimmy Carter Boulevard over Interstate 85, which is one of the busiest, if not the busiest, intersections in the state of Georgia, that completely stopped traffic. When we switched to the ACT teams, unfortunately, the police officers were told, you have to call the ACT team, and the ACT team has to respond to the location. At that particular instance, they did call the ACT team, but the ACT team was in Tequila, which is about 35 miles away from Jimmy Carter Boulevard, 25 miles away. It doesn't matter how many miles away it is, it's probably 2 hours worth of traffic in rush hour. So they couldn't respond to the scene, and this bill seeks to alleviate that problem. It's the ability to apprehend and transport. One of the issues that came up was in the rural settings, because in the rural settings, the sheriff usually knows Jimmy John that lives down the street that's been on drugs, that has mental health problems. They know who to call, the aunt or the mother, to see about Jimmy John. When these metro areas, you don't have those incidents of high urbanized areas, and the police don't have alternatives. So this gives the ability of them to be able to apprehend, to put them in the back of a police car or the back of an ambulance. But the most important thing is they're on the telephone with the emergency room doctor. And the doctor, they're describing the symptoms, and the doctor tells them to transport. They're staying in connection. They're not doing a 1013. They're not doing any kind of legal matters. They're just transporting them to the emergency room. It's an opt-in situation, because in rural Georgia, you don't need this. But in Cobb County, Gwinnett County, Clayton County, Fulton County, we desperately need this to get these people off the street. Because, number one, these people are either going to harm themselves or they're going to harm others. So this is the opportune time to be able to alleviate the situation. I know there's some concerns about the volumes of calls. You know what my answer is to that? I'd rather have the volumes of calls than someone at the Mall of Georgia in the food court blowing everybody away, which is what happens if you leave these people on the street. They're going to jump off the bridge, or they're going to go and do a mass shooting. It's better to apprehend them and our system to be overloaded than it is to leave them on the street and let their families have to fend on their own for them. So that this is how the bill originated. I have some police officers here that can be much better. This issue was the very first issue that came up, and Representative Katie Dempsey had a sheriff's deputy from Douglas County. That was the very first concern that came up in her committee, was the dire needs of these local police departments and how do the sheriffs take care of them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to them. Is that okay?
Ooh, sure. Yeah.
Can I just move this? Which one wants to speak first? Okay,
Yeah.
here you go. And they've been so good because they came to the Senate hearings.
Okay, if you'll identify yourself. No, we appreciate you taking time to come and speak to us also, officers.
Thank you, ma'am. My name's Greg Adams. I'm a major with the Gwinnett County Police Department. So thank you for hearing us. I guess the best way to segue into this is to give you an example of an incident we had just last month or so. It happened on January the 18th. There are some photos here that you'll be able to see. The simple backstory to this is that a woman called us saying that her husband was suicidal. This was at 4 o'clock in the morning. He was not a military veteran, but he had been a victim of a crime and had issues with medication, and for whatever reason decided that suicide was the answer for him. He had a firearm. According to them, he attempted to harm himself. He may have even fired a round off, but they were able to get the gun away from him, one of the guns. But then he went up into the attic space. They closed the attic to keep him at bay. But what he did is he crawled through the front vent there, broke out the vent, and ended up on that ledge where you can see. When we got there, the police, after speaking to her, after looking at everything, after checking his history, the simple answer is there was no underlying penal offense for us to take any action. No crime had been committed. There was no way for us to really proceed any further. The fire department gets there. We want to help. We recognize that there are people in need, and the answer is not jail. But to walk away from a situation like this is just not ethical or moral. Our chief wants us to do the right thing. Mobile Crisis, we contacted them about a 2-hour ETA. Another mechanism is probate. Unfortunately, at 4 a.m. in the morning, probate courts aren't open. It also requires testimony of 2 folks. So while this happened at 4 o'clock, from 4 until 8 o'clock, we were kind of in a stymie. We were trying to talk him down, but he didn't want to come down. And we're very familiar with civil liberties. We want to do the right thing. We were able to finally get the wife off to the court. Mobile Crisis, we did make contact with them. Their initial response was, sure, we want to help, but the folks that we can send out there right now, all they can do is talk to them and do a voluntary consent. That was who they said was on call. We asked them to go ahead and be en route. Fortunately, when they did arrive, a couple hours later, it was, I believe it was an LPC, which
Good.
once she sees, she can on scene do the stuff. But we weren't made aware of that miscommunication episode, however it wants to. But again, we were looking for the best way to properly handle this situation from a police perspective to get this person help. The sound side is he had a weapon initially. From a tactical perspective, we're always concerned, does he still have another gun? Unfortunately, we're aware of things happen where folks who may be suicidal can momentarily become homicidal and do silly things. So you don't want to leave the scene. You don't just want to walk away where there's potential that this person not only may harm themselves, but others. We want to take action, but we want to do it above board. We want to do the right thing, and we want to get this person to the right help. And jail is not always the answer.
Okay. The questions, I've got members lighting up the board. Questions for the officer or just question in general? Representative Henson, is it a question for the officer?
I'll ask it after they finish.
Okay. Representative Reinders? Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
You finished?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, my name is Mark Peters. I'm the Medical Operations Chief for the Gwinnett County Fire Department. As you saw in the pictures there, our apparatus and our crews are on the scenes as well. We've seen a large increase in the number of calls that we go on every year dealing with psychological issues, either on the primary side or on the secondary side. So we may get dispatched out to just an assault or just an altered mental status and wind up being actually a psychotic event going on. And we've seen a 42% increase just in these calls in the last 4 years. Now, our normal call volume is only increases about 5%. So as you can see, specific to these type patients, it's a large increase. And we want to echo what Major was talking about is, taking these folks to jail is not always the best thing for these folks. We want to get them into a medical facility to where they can get the treatment that they need. We already have this process in place, and we use this process every day, calling physicians of the emergency department and getting their authorization to perform life-saving critical skills that, if not performed correctly, can have a disastrous outcome. So it's not something that we're not used to. We talk to physicians daily, but via the radio, via the phone, whatever the case may be. And again, adding to this, with our crews working together, we get out there and we know these people can be helped. We truly know they can, and we're not able to do that. So it actually also has a little bit of a secondary effect on our crews. When they leave those scenes, that they're not able to do anything. And that's just not what's in the best interest of the patient as well. Thank you.
Do you have anything? Okay, okay, Representative Henson. Okay, you wave. Representative Rogers.
Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this. You have my support. I just want to make sure that the civil liberties issue that come up, I just want to ask about. On line 22, peace officer, is that defined in code anywhere?
Yes, Lynn Witten, I don't know, is she here?
No, it's
No.
Betsy. Betsy,
Betsy's here.
can you answer that?
Lynn Witten went over this. This bill had, I don't know how many hearings. And we have several attorneys on the health committee, and they made sure that it was correct.
Yeah, it's defined as any federal, city, or county police officer, Georgia State Patrol, or sheriff, or deputy sheriff.
So would that include, for example, a coroner wouldn't be included in that?
I don't think
No.
so.
Okay, thank you. And additionally, if I may, because I understand the importance of making sure that people have, not be held liable, but line 29, under the probable cause, I believe that there's a probable cause definition in law enforcement. Is there a probable cause definition anywhere as it relates to the ability to be able to do what you're asking to do? How would you define probable cause?
I think it's the relationship, and we went over this in committee also, is the relationship between the caller and the emergency doctor. And the doctor is the one that is, they're describing the symptoms, and he's making the judgment call to, yes, go ahead and transport them. And the one thing that we didn't bring up is the fact that we're alleviating the backlog in the pretrial detention centers, that these people don't need to be in the pretrial detention center. They need to be in the hospital to determine if they need a 1013, and not go and wait 6 more hours. If they go to the pretrial center, they're going to be sitting there because then they have to be evaluated by mental health there. And it could be 6 hours, I don't know how many hours in some of these big correction systems.
Madam Chair, if I may just continue briefly. Number 3 says there on line 31, have consulted with the emergency receiving facility physician, but 2 doesn't say that it's the physician. The probable cause doesn't say specifically that it has to be the physician on 2. Number 3 is a separate one.
Yeah, it is.
So I guess what I'm asking is, your definition was that they have contacted the physician, and in the physician's opinion, shouldn't that say in the physician's opinion there is probable cause in number 2 on 29?
Senator, let my legal person answer this, okay? Betsy?
Yeah.
Yeah, probable cause is not a defined term in here, however, there's volumes of case law on that. So the probable cause judgment is gonna be made by the EMT before they make the phone call to the physician.
Not the physician, right. And that's why I was asking if there's an EMT standard of probable cause, because I read it exactly like you did, Betsy. Is there a standard that EMT uses that's universal anywhere that says what is probable cause?
I think they have their standard operating procedures, and they're actually more used to dealing with mental health folks just as much as police officers.
I support you, Bill, and I hope in the future, if there's not something in writing, that when someone gets hired, you actually say this is what looks like probable cause, just before we blankly give it to anybody. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'm going to take my questions from my people, but remember that the senator has a meeting going on right now that she is the chair of, and she needs to get back as soon as
Yeah,
possible.
they're your members' bills.
I know, and I have a very important bill over there. So, well, okay, so if it's critical, Representative Mosby?
Well, just real quick, line 55, why is there a reason to repeal this?
Okay,
I don't see a line 55. Maybe I'm working on.
it's the last
Oh, I
line.
didn't put that in there. That's a good question. I
No.
don't know.
It's in there because there's real concern from the department and from other people that there's going to be a huge, not laying blame on the police or anybody else, but you heard the fire chief say that there had been a 42% increase in the number of calls, of this type of call, where normally there's only a 5%, increase in calls. And there is very concerned. You have in your paper in your folder, if you will look at it, what's happened in the last 3 years, this is to the hotline through our mental health department. 110, almost 111,000 calls where somebody thought that somebody needed a 1013. Family member like this lady, somebody on the street that sees a person on the bridge. Out of that, the crisis person working that phone system said and evaluated that in 16 that only 15,000 of those needed somebody to go out. And when they went out, only 4,000 of them needed a 1013. So there's many more calls. So there is this feeling that since these calls are increasing, that the police and the fire, that there might be a huge influx of people being taken to the hospital and overload
Madam
our
Chairman,
system.
could
And
I
that's
address
just
that
a-
real quick?
Sure.
First of all, our state has grown to 10 million people, so obviously
Right. There's
the
an increase.
infrastructure has not kept up. But as Representative Dempsey and I can tell you and attest to from all these hearings, that our system has changed. We've gone from deinstitutionalization to community-based services, and the community-based services aren't there. And that's why you're getting all these phone calls. And it's our fiduciary responsibility as the budget writers to fund their department, but it's also their responsibility to tell us what their needs are. The needs aren't being met. That's why his calls are going up dramatically. But we can't sit back and just say, well, the system's broken, we're not going to do anything about it. We have to kind of prop up the system, and that's exactly what this bill is trying to accomplish.
Right, and I agree with the senator that this is not going to take care of that problem. And I was going to say to you that, our hospitals are complaining that they're getting overloaded, that they're having people that are mentally ill sitting in rooms and tying up rooms for 3 days, and other times, before they can get them to a proper where we have a bed. The feds have made us close many of our hospital beds. We've got a bigger problem. So I was going to say, in the end, Senator, I think we need to get together and see if we can find a
Part
solution.
of what that other task force is going to be
Gonna
looking at.
do.
And I really don't have a problem with this keeping statistics on it and the sunset. I think it's good to check in, see how they're doing, see how the budget's doing.
And see whether the people that were right, that we're overloaded.
Yeah.
If we're overloaded and it looks like, we can renew this, and if it'll certainly prove that we
Or if
need
the
more
ag
help.
teams are beefed up, which would be the
That's
answer
exactly
to the
right.
problem.
So that's why that's in there. Okay, Representative Sharper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to be very, very brief. I know you have to leave. But I want to give a bigger or better example of what people actually go through instead of the example you gave. For instance, there's a difference between what's kind of lawful and what we do in the medical profession as well as law enforcement. For instance, if he told, when we got here today, sitting in this room, he came up to me and said, Dexter, on the way here, man, I was feeling bad, a lot of things going on. I even thought about maybe driving off the bridge on the way here or putting a gun up to my head because, man, I'm just being stressful. And he told me that. So he looked up, and you two guys come in here. He had suicidal thoughts. I was concerned. And I said, well, how you doing? I said, I'm doing fine, but then I'm still watching you, but I did make the call. When you get here, we know we have crisis center in some areas, we have hospitals in some areas where he could possibly go. But what are you bound by law not to or to do in his situation? What would you do?
Can I answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think, these are extreme circumstances.
No,
I
that's
don't-
every day for me, 25 years, that's what we get. That's
Yeah.
what I go to as a paramedic.
Yeah.
So that's an everyday situation with something like that happening. So I need to know from you guys, or even through the law, if we've been doing something that we're not supposed to. An example, when I go to that patient, and even though he said, oh, I'm fine now, but the family say, no, he's not like he really supposed to be. A lot of times, and I know we're on video, hopefully they don't take me to jail if we've been doing something wrong. But
And this is short?
yeah, this is short, but this is critical. This is critical to this bill, okay?
Okay.
So if I'm telling him, look, we understand you say you're okay now, but somebody this, and you said you felt like that earlier. Either you can go with us, and he says, I don't want to go anywhere, I'm fine. So I always say, okay, well, look, you can go with us and, you know, try to butter him up and say, come on, you need help, let's do it for your family, da-da-da. But he said, no, I'm not going. Talk to me. What do you do in that sense? And we usually say, look, either you can go with us or you can go with them.
Okay,
Now,
Representative
talk to me.
Dexter, I'm gonna let the senator go, but I have a master's degree in psychiatric nursing.
Uh-huh.
And that's one of the reasons that the department and other people have a fear that we're gonna be overloaded. Because if somebody, a lot of us come in the morning and, you know, say, make comments like that. And people need to make a quick evaluation of whether that was just a one-off, which it could very well have been, or whether there's a whole lot, am I right, Counselor, of a real thing. And if everybody that did make that one comment gets carried in, then we will have a problem. So
Well, I want them to address basically when we see what was going on, that person's not stable at that particular time. It's okay for us, I mean, I'd rather take somebody in versus them saying, I'm fine, and then you come back and he shot up his whole family. So I'm just trying to get to the bill. I'm not getting to the psychiatric part of what you're talking about. I want to know what you guys do in that situation. What's right and what's wrong according to this bill in dealing with him.
I think this bill gives them the ability to be doing something about it. Right now, they don't have that ability. They have to commit a crime, and then they have to take them to the jail.
Okay, so,
If they haven't committed a crime or they hadn't done something, the police officers can't do anything. That's the whole problem. The guy that was standing on the Jimmy Carter Bridge, he hadn't done anything.
okay.
He's just standing there saying, I'm gonna jump off. Now, did he start impeding traffic and causing a commotion? Yeah, but you have to wait till then.
Okay.
This allows you to intervene before it becomes the crisis situation.
All right, so basically, if I get to the point and I feel that he should go as a paramedic through our training, and he doesn't want to go, once he get in the hands of law enforcement,
You
they
have to
that.
call the
We'll call
medical
them- right,
doctor first.
Right, even if we call the medical doctor like we do and say, look, he needs to go, da-da-da, at that point, he still says, no, we can't take him as a paramedic or EMT by force. So at
right.
that point, it goes to him, and what you're saying,
Department.
this is gonna protect him, once we've spoken with the physician at the hospital, and you've done the same thing, at that
Then
point,
you
he say,
can
okay.
transport,
Right, okay,
right.
even by force in a sense, because you have to restrain him, and the doctor also can give you restraining orders. Okay, that's all I need to see if that's what this bill is doing.
And the moral of that story is, don't anybody say you're suicidal in Albany, Georgia, or indicate.
Just real quick,
Here, you wanna go?
You're a paramedic?
You have to speak right here.
So just to put it in our terms, it's the same thing as if we go out there and I've got somebody with a heart rate of 50. We know that's bradycardia, and it's up to you whether or not you're going to treat it, right? If I talk to this gentleman right here and he's oriented, orientation is what we kind of use. We don't use the term probable cause. We use orientation. If they're oriented, then they're making sense, where I'm at, who I am, what's going on, then we can allow them to make some more contribute to that outcome of that, but offer them help, obviously, whatever we can do.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right. Is there anybody that on this list that has a real burning desire to question the bill? You got, okay, Representative Dempsey.
One, to say thank you, first of all, and I'm so glad that you brought this forward. It does present exactly what we've heard for years in each and every committee that we have pulled together, study committee, to listen to. It happens every week, it happens every day across our state and across our nation. These are very fragile issues that are time sensitive, without a doubt. And the hands of EMS, like you just said, are tied right now. You can see something and have that ability, but you cannot do it. So that's what it all boils down to. And I'm glad we can try to assist in this way. And Madam Chairman, when you're ready, I'll be glad to make a motion.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience? Representative Henson? All right, it has to be a direct question, not a long, involved story. I'm sorry.
I
but-
don't have a story about this. One, I want to clarify. What this is really doing is allowing y'all to transport.
It's the ability to apprehend and transport, yes.
Okay.
That's the name of the bill.
So my other question is, I know the police are trained to deal with hostage situations.
Right.
Are they being trained to deal with?
Yes, mental health, yes.
So they are currently.
Yes, and remember, this is for the urbanized city areas. And I have worked with these folks for many, many years, as have you. And I have full confidence that they're keeping up with the times. Right now, our biggest incidence is opioid and heroin. You know, they've been training them in naloxone. So the mental health training is progressing rapidly. I think you can give a lot of contributions to accolades to Vernon Keenan in filtering down through the GBI down to the local governments.
And I want to say one last thing. You're very fortunate in Gwinnett County in pretty well having your police force staffed.
Right.
You are paying them better
Representative
than the
Henson.
cab. I want to finish one last thing, please. Others are not so fortunate in the metro area in
Yeah, we
terms
heard
of
from
paying.
them.
And I think it's one of the things that we as legislators need to be advocating to our commissioners in our respective counties, that we need to be paying
Thank
our
you,
police
Representative
better.
Henson. Representative Newton, you're the last one, and make it short. You
Yes,
understand
ma'am.
the word short?
I do. Thank you for the bill. As an emergency physician, this is something we see every day, and it is
Right.
growing. I think it's a crucial thing. Quick question on line 31, the emergency receiving facility, is that include crisis stabilization and
Yes.
psychiatric hospitals? Is it
Yes.
okay if they talk to a physician at a regular emergency department
Yes.
who agrees?
Yes.
Okay, so down in room
Yes.
44, a physician. I
Yes.
do appreciate the fact that for Representative Sharper, there is, you're not liable for any act or omission. That's helpful to have a little bit of that, because
Yeah,
these are
the-
tough situations.
Yeah, the CSUs came up in our hearings, and yes, they are applicable.
Okay, and I
But the
appreciate it.
physician has to make sure, and they have to find out that there is a capability, the availability of a bed
Of-
for 'em
right.
in that place.
All
So
right,
they
and I
can't,
appreciate those stats on the number of calls versus the number who really have their civil liberties limited is 115,000 down to 4,000. So I know you guys do a great job to limit it to hopefully the most serious ones, and I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Representative Dempsey,
Pass.
okay? I've got a motion to pass and a second to it. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak against the bill? And no, it's all right, identify yourself.
Real quickly, I'm with Cobb County, Captain EMS. I also represent the board of directors for Georgia EMS and the Metro Atlanta EMS Association, and we are strongly in support of this bill.
And you're going to train your officers and like that. Thank you very much for coming. Anyone want to speak against the bill? Hearing no one that wants to speak about the bill. Everybody in the favor of the passage of the substitute to Senate Bill 4, that is LC 372440S, say aye. Everyone opposed, no. Okay, I'll be right over. That's a,
40.
to 40, sorry. No, it's okay. I'm trying to get her out of, getting Senator out of here. Okay, so everybody in favor, let's do it again. Everybody in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 40, and that is, no, let me make sure. Where's the bill? Can I repeat it for you? No, thank you. We're getting it up here with our clerk. Okay, so it is LC 337067S. Everybody in the favor of the passage of the substitute to Senate Bill 40 with that LC number, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No. The ayes have it. Senator, you're
Thank you.
passed. And
Thank
I
you.
will, Matt Hatchett's carrying your first bill. I'm carrying this one since Cobb County is one of the people that needs it. We'll go by and take care of it. I'm coming over. I'll take care of it with the rules chairman on our side. Thank you very much. See if we can get these bills moving. Okay. I'll be right, Senator Unterman. I'll be right there. I'm coming behind you. Senator Kirk, let's get you in and out of here. Okay, it's Senate Bill 106.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I present to you Senate Bill 106. I'm working off LC 337063S. And this is a bill that will allow CRNA, Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetists, to work in the pain clinic and to administer the local anesthetics and epidurals and so forth that they do with whether or not the physician's on site at the time. So it's a bill that, I'll tell you this much, your chairperson has worked very diligently on and with me, and this is what the language we've come up with, and I think this is, the bill has been perfected by the Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, I'll open for any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee for the senator? Okay. Representative Mitchell.
Madam Chair, I know the merits of this bill and am ready to make a motion to do pass.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the committee? Representative Price.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't think we have in front of us the current,
Yeah. Is it the right one?
LC 7063S.
okay, thank you. Was this run by anybody in the anesthesiology community?
It was. They were there in the Senate hearings as well.
Okay. Mr. Tony, would you like, to speak to that?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, and Dr. Price, the Georgia Society of Anesthesiologists appreciates the work that Madam Chair has done on this bill, the willingness of the Senate author to reach a conclusion. This is a 4-year effort to make a tweak to correct what was an unintended consequence of the 2013 pain management clinic licensure bill. It is protective of public health and patient safety while accomplishing the Senate author's goal of assuring that nurse anesthetists working within their scope of practice are allowed to practice in the pain clinics.
Thank you. Is there anyone in opposition to the bill? Okay, Reinders?
Just real quick.
Sure.
Senator Mullis was in here last week, and we were talking about how we're going to look at this in the various regions throughout the state. And I just want to make sure I ask the same question as it related to the dental and the hygienist bill. The physician that the anesthetist is working under does have to be licensed in Georgia.
Yes, in fact, they
So
own
you
the
can't be a
clinic.
Chattanooga physician
No.
that owns in
No.
Northwest Georgia. Okay. Correct?
You can't be
We will
you have to
have
be
no
licensed
Georgia-
in Georgia to own a pain clinic. So they may have to be licensed in Chattanooga, but they also would have to be licensed in Georgia, is my understanding, for them to even own a pain clinic. All pain clinics, my understanding, are owned by physicians in the state of Georgia.
And Madam
or
Chair,
hospitals.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the purpose was we didn't want dental clinics from out of states and things of this nature, and I just
We
want to
want
make sure. the same thing-
reciprocity
Right.
if that happens. I
This
understand.
doesn't
Thank you.
have anything to do
No.
with owning a pain clinic. It just says that usually nurse anesthetists work a bit more independently than nurse practitioners or PAs.
I understand. I just want the doctor to be licensed in Georgia.
Oh, yeah, he has to be.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, okay. There's no other questions. Do I have a motion? Okay. Dr. Gale, there was a sign-up with Dr. Gale, who is an anesthesiologist and a pain specialist. Did he want to speak?
I'll be very brief because it looks like everything that is in favor and you have to go somewhere. So both the two organizations I represent, the Georgia Society of Interventional Pain Physicians and the Georgia Society of Anesthesiologists, are thankful for everybody here for working with compromised language. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Representative Reinders has said a move to pass. Do I have a second? Okay, I have a second to pass. Any other discussion? Anyone, everyone in favor of the substitute to Senate Bill 106, which is LC 337063S, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Okay, the ayes have it. Senator Kirk, I'm going to be carrying this bill for you.
Thank you.
And I'll go by I'm going right with you, and I'll go by and sign the papers up and see if we can get this moving through our rules.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Okay, you're
Thank
welcome.
you, committee.
And I'm going to turn the rest of the meeting over to my vice chair. Thank you. Okay, where's my sheet? That's what I need. Oh. Do you have a? I got another one. Okay, got another one. Okay.
All right. Which one we want to do first, Brody? What do you have down? Brody, okay. Representative Brody, would you like to come up and address your House Resolution 446? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here on House Resolution 446. What I would like to do is have the House to create a study commission or committee and name it Johnny Tolbert III House Study Commission on Heat Stroke. The reason why I wanted to name it that, a 12-year-old in my district died last July 2016 from heat stroke. He was practicing with a youth football league at the Welcome All Park. 90-degree weather. He had to be admitted to the hospital for a heat stroke. He ultimately died a week later from heat-related injuries. But before he died, he actually became brain dead. And again, he was participating in conditioning drills. He was the only child of his parents. This is a big issue. It is a huge issue. Georgia has the most heat-related football deaths in the country, with 6 deaths between the years of 1980 and 2009. That data comes directly from the National Center for Catastrophic Sports Injury Research Center at the University of North Carolina. If we add in 2 additional football deaths, that's 8 deaths from the year 1980 to 2016. Right now, the Georgia High School Association does have guidelines. However, I don't think the guidelines go far enough. And basically, the biggest test for heat stroke is the wet bulb globe temperature test or reading, which is a composite temperature used to estimate the effect of air temperature, humidity, and solar radiation on the body. So basically, if it's about 90 degrees outside, or if you have a heat index of 92, it's probably about a 105 or 104 outside. The issue that I really have is that we have no consistency in the state of Georgia when we're dealing with youth sports. I looked into counties such as mine, Fulton County. We have multiple football leagues, multiple youth football leagues. And if anybody knows, youth football is big money now. It's probably not as big as the NFL, but there's a lot of money going into it. But we're not putting a lot of the money into the safety. Gwinnett County has 16 youth football leagues. None of them have any universal guidelines on how you deal with heat stroke. That is a big issue for me. One of the things that the National Center for Catastrophic Sports Injury Research recommended is that you need to have someone that's a certified athletic trainer. You need to make sure coaches are certified and know the guidelines of when you should not be able to practice, when practice should stop. Right now, the Georgia Association of High School Football basically states that if the heat index is 92 degrees, all practice must stop. Anything up until that time is kind of regulated on whether the students will practice in pads or not in pads. But I just feel like if we have the highest rate of deaths in this country, we need to have a study committee to look at what can we do, because I only think the General Assembly can make this universal. We have a lot of counties in the state of Georgia. We have a lot of youth football leagues, but unless we have something that's universal, say like the Georgia High School Sports Association that deals with high school players and athletics, we're in trouble, and more students are going to have to die. I had to go speak with those parents, and that parent asked me, that mother said, William Bodie, what can you do? And I told him I would try to do my best to make sure this does not happen to another 12 or 13-year-old again. I'm free for any questions. Thank you. I'm going to do this as quick as I can, and you might have to take over. I've got a bill at 3 o'clock also. I thought we could do these 2 resolutions pretty quick. Doesn't look like it, though. Representative Pizzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, I went on WebMD.com and learned about heat stroke in about 5 minutes.
Yes.
What would a study committee find out that I couldn't learn on WebMD in 5 minutes?
Well, I think, Representative, we definitely know about what could possibly be done as far as, or we can definitely get up to speed on what a heat stroke is. The problem is we don't have a universal way of tackling the issue. So my issue is not on, okay, what heat stroke necessarily does to the body. That's part of my study committee. The second part is, what are we going to do to protect our kids? How can we present a universal guideline to protecting our youth leagues and youth athletic industries here in the state of Georgia? So my study committee will be twofold. One, to look at the effects of heat stroke on a young person, but also to implement guidelines to have youth athletics all across the state of Georgia adhere to.
Couldn't we just adhere to GHSA's guidelines?
That's
I mean, are those sufficient? I mean, I know we're talking about 18-year-old, 17, 18-year-olds versus 12-year-olds, but
respectfully, Representative, I don't think that's sufficient enough. In 2015, a Burke County High School player, Roger Rod Williams, died in Waynesboro, Georgia, during a football practice. And this is under GHS's guidelines. He was practicing and doing he was doing conditioning drills, and he still died. So I put it in my resolution. I want to give an example of youth sports, but also high school sports. So I don't think we necessarily got the best guidelines, even with the Georgia High School Sports Association.
Have you met with them?
No, I have not.
All right. Number 11. Who we got number 11 down there? We gonna take Representative Newton.
Hey, thank you for the concern and the effort. I know it's always a balance for parents to decide whether their child should participate in sports, with obesity being such a challenge.
Yes.
That sports are so valuable, but they do have a tough side too and a negative side. A lot of these, we have these deaths in basketball as well. They're usually a cardiomyopathy that's undiagnosed, an enlargement of the heart muscle that causes an unknown arrhythmia. Some of the football, these deaths related to football may be associated with the same thing. Of course, we also have head and neck injuries in the collision sports like football, or the contact sports like soccer and basketball. It seems to me like it might be of more value to see if there was a way to include maybe youth sports in general, to look, do we need to update our standards? Some states have started requiring an EKG or recommending it, some for certain kids at high risk. So there's a good bit more than just the children, the young, mostly boys, dying in football related. And I wonder if you think this might be a little too precise, that maybe if we're going to look at youth sports and how we can make them safer for our kids, maybe, I mean, and it includes cheerleading with head injuries and all too. So might it be better if you're going to dedicate a study committee to maybe expand it to look at sports related either injuries or deaths, and see if there's some ways we'll never get it to zero. We recognize that, and the benefits we think far outweigh the negative.
Well, Representative and Dr. Newton, because I appreciate your expertise in this area, I completely agree, and I have no issues with that. I know Representative Billy Mitchell passed legislation not too long ago to deal with head concussions and head concussion protocol with high school sports. So I'm completely agreeing to, or open to, opening it up to other sports arenas in other areas such as cheerleading, because it is a huge problem. Football is the one that we see more often, and it's the one that's publicized a lot more in the media, but I can completely agree and add in basketball and other sports into that, to the resolution as well.
Thank you. Representative, you also mentioned the words universal and consistency. Given that as the backdrop, have you engaged the Senate in a joint House-Senate study committee?
No, I have not. It was too late.
Representative?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, it was too late?
It was too late when I actually got the opportunity to get all the information to file my House resolution. So, I think, in my mind, it was too late, because I feel like this is
Because if you pass this, okay.
Yeah.
Chairwoman Dempsey.
Yes.
Yeah, it is too late for that. That had to be done before day 30, actually,
Exactly.
to do the joint. So, no, what I was going to say also goes along with what Dr. Newton was saying as well. In 1968, actually, my husband almost died from a heat stroke running track. And that is a sport where it is seen quite frequently, actually. And back in 1968, all they could do was pack him in ice.
Yes.
And really, he was not thought that he would live. He has, and he's pretty great and pretty special. But it did bring on other things like seizures. So this is a very complicated issue. I know we're late in the session. I'm not trying to be discouraging to you. It may sound that way, but I'm not. I feel like it's broader subject matter that it might be good to discuss and to think about a joint committee for the next interim when we break. I'd also, at this point, if it was just going to be a House committee, I'd encourage you to look at 5 members instead of 7 to make it more cost effective. But we are late in the year. I think you're on track for something that's very important, and it does go below the ages of just high school, but there's a lot of information that probably needs to be gathered to be fed into this to make it really a strong ask.
Thank you, Chairwoman Dempsey, and she's exactly right. And I recall for some of the veteran members, Representative Mitchell's concussion, and that was vetted thoroughly because we didn't want the unintended consequences of the person in a dugout at a 7-year-old game having to sign off on something because they didn't know concussion protocol, and it actually being a deterrent to participation. And those are the kind of things that we get a little nervous about when you actually start going down this path. Representative Silcox.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I so appreciate you bringing this, Representative Bodie, and I do agree with Representative Dempsey and Representative Newton. This is a very important issue. I will mention that a contact of mine is actually head of the Georgia Athletic Trainers Association, and I think they could bring to bear a lot of information as well to this issue. This was a big issue at my children's high school, and the Booster Club ended up donating these cooling tents that we could use that would just spray water for all the outside track, soccer, lacrosse, football, all the athletic events that occurred outside. And so I do think it's an important issue, and I appreciate you bringing it, but I agree with Chairwoman Dempsey that perhaps we could bring some more people together before and get a better product probably in the interim.
And I would say this, I'm completely open to expanding, and also Representative Silcox, I would not have any issue with maybe calling that organization to testify, because I would want multiple organizations to testify in this, because I think athletic trainers would be critical to this study, because they're the boots on the ground. If someone gets hurt at practice or even the game, because a lot of times you don't have physicians there, is that athletic trainers will be the first responder to that.
Representative Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As much as I was mentioned, I will tell you, you were absolutely right, Mr. Chairman, that it was called the Return to Play Act was thoroughly vetted, but that placed a protocol in law. It was no study committee, as the author of this bill seeks from this body at this time. I will tell you, in going through that process, the representative is absolutely correct in that there is no process in place in Georgia when we talk about athletics as to what should happen. When you have the confluence of competitive athletes and overzealous coaches and cheering fans for victories, if there's no protocol in place as to what happens when such a situation that this would apply to, we have bad things happening. And I think it's incumbent on this body to say, you know what, this is an issue that begs that we take a look at it. And the author is asking for no more than we study the issue. Maybe some of you with some of these ideas to study the issue can come together how we can broaden and address this issue. I can present to you a day as a result of some of you veterans voting for the Return to Play Act, how many student athletes are surviving as a result of your acts. Our failure to act here simply says, well, we'll let some more kids die or have heat stroke until we get around to the right balance of opinion. And I think that the representative ought to be applauded and sent a due pass and patted on the back and get some of these cheerleaders to cheer and some of these football players to cheer, because this is a good bill, and at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion to pass, Mr. Chairman.
And just to
Played your politics well there. Representative Henson.
Thank you. With regard to Johnny Tolbert III, what month was it that he had?
July of 2016.
Now, are we practicing in July because we start school so early now?
Well, this is a youth football league. He was actually 12 years old at the time he died. And I was told that, and I never dealt with this when I played youth sports, that he was participating in tour days. Basically, if you play high school football, tour days are what you do in the summer to get ready for a fall practice and to get ready for the season. So for a youth to be doing tour days, and he was practicing at 7:30 at night when he probably was also practicing early in the day, and it was around 90 to 91 degrees, that's a concern for me, because we should be regulating that, because in high school football sports, you regulate tour days, and you can only have so many practices a day, and you have to have so many water breaks and things of that nature. So this is youth sports. As Representative Billy Mitchell stated before, it's not as regulated as high school athletics.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're trying to figure out a way to make it work.
Well, I want to make it work, Mr. Chairman.
We'll see. Representative Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a co-signer on this bill because I'm an advocate for children. One life is too many, okay? And nobody wants to kick the can down the street. And the only thing that I'm saying to the committee is, when it doesn't hit your front door, or you don't have any kids at that age, you're not sympathetic with the other people who do have these kids out here in these athletic sports. And it creates an environment where do we start? Are we starting too young, or we have to see more lives lost until we get involved? This is a very important issue. The kids are our future, and that's all we have. We don't have anything else to look forward to. Most of us on this committee is on the backside, like myself. And so we have to start somewhere. And why not start now? I'd rather be.
I think we all want to start, but we do have to have an obligation to get it right.
Yes, I'm in agreement.
I'll never shuck that. It's like the medical marijuana says, you got to have courage. I go, we still got to write a good bill.
Right. Well, let's start somewhere. Let's start there.
Representative Sharper. Yes, I was saving the best for last.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. He can go.
You wave?
He can go first.
My friend.
Used to be.
Now, see, I'm getting in trouble because you didn't write it down.
I think.
You see that?
Let me see the hands of those sitting up here as a member of Georgia High Schools Athletic Association. I've been a member of the association for 32 years of my working life. I coached football, basketball, and girls track. What this resolution does, it opens the doors to some things that we neglected, even as a little league coach. And I got pictures down in my office, me and my little league teams. We didn't think about no heat, but we were concerned. We had people who were concerned. We wouldn't let them go out at certain temperatures. But this is something we just going to study to find out what we need to do to make sure that we don't have anybody, kid, dropping dead out there on the field. And this is not an R or a D thing. Right. And we playing these R and D games again. Always playing the little games, side games. We need to cut it out. These are for kids. These are for kids. And don't you forget it either. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Dempsey?
Yeah, I want to see if there's a way we can make it work.
Thank you, Representative.
So,
hold on. If we're going to look at some amendments, some things that you're talking about, yes. Representative Sharper, would you like back up?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
In the light of what I'm seeing going on for sure, and I think some of the solutions for this is going to be some of the people that are going to vote to not do this right now because it's not put together all the way that they want it to be. And I think what you're doing is very important for sure. I want to be a part of, you know, getting some of the information going with this thing, and we want to do it the right way. So I'm gonna motion that we table it where we can get together on a subcommittee. Well, y'all have the opportunity.
Hold on, I don't know if I'm gonna, just hold that. I don't know if I'm gonna recognize you for that purpose at this particular time.
Okay.
What I would like to do is to see if the committee will indulge the chair just a little bit. I'd love to let us go in recess for maybe 5 minutes. So Representative Chairwoman Dempsey. That's way too much information. Maybe Chairwoman Dempsey and our good friend on the end that thought this was an R&D game, y'all get together and see if we can't come up with something that may be able to work.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
I move recess for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
The committee, members of the committee, Representative Brody has agreed. Where's he at? The representative has agreed that we're going to take the necessary action to perfect the piece of legislation. The representative has agreed we're going to look at this and try to do it right and come back on Thursday.
Yes.
That's our posture, so I want everybody to know. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think this committee is moving in the right direction, and thank you for your leadership on that. And I think that's we've got House Resolution 464 by Representative Betty Price and Chairwoman Cooper.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Representative Price, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you House Resolution 464, which would create a House Study Commission on somebody else said that, committee on infectious disease preparedness with a special emphasis on the Zika virus. We are in the midst of a potential devastating epidemic and/or pandemic from the Zika virus. We know that last summer we were sort of introduced to this devastating disease, and we just want to make sure that Georgia is prepared. We seem to, in comparison with other states, maybe not quite as ready as Florida and Texas are. In Georgia, we do have we've got the summer coming up, and of course the Zika virus and many others are transmitted by mosquitoes, and we just need to make sure that that we've got adequate prevention of mosquitoes through spraying, et cetera, in our various counties where these things are handled. And we, of course, know that expectant mothers are extremely sensitive to this disease. That's the problem coming from this virus and causing devastating results in the children born to those mothers who were infected, including abnormal brain development, severe abnormal brain development, seizures, developmental and intellectual disabilities, problems with movement and balance, feeding problems, hearing loss, vision problems, just to hit the top ones. And we know that the costs of caring for these children can be a huge issue, especially if these numbers grow. We're not quite sure that the Zika is transmitted from person to person, but at this point we know that it is definitely a mosquito-borne condition. At this point, there is no vaccine, no treatment, no good serological test. The CDC, of course, has made a number of recommendations, and nationally we are aware of the problem, and they are addressing it. However, in our state, it may not be that we are as ready as some of the other states. Georgia is the number 3 state in the country that's had diagnoses already made. There are probably about 100,000 pregnant women at risk in Georgia in the next little while. So we want to make sure that Georgia is ready, that we have the reproductive services available to those women that are in a position where they should not get pregnant, because there is a time frame that they need to wait after they've been exposed. Many people don't have any symptoms. They wouldn't even know that they have it. So we may need to increase reproductive services in certain times of the year. There's just a lot of things we don't know yet, since we've only got 1 year's experience with this condition. So the plan is, or the request is, to start a study committee to address these issues and make recommendations for legislation similar to what was in Florida and Texas.
Okay, Representative Price, let me let the committee know so that they will know. At the top of the resolution, you will see that it said Representative Cannon, Henson, Price, and so forth, and Lott. And that was for the Zika virus. And I decided, and on my wisdom here late, that this needed to be expanded, and that I thought that a physician should be in the ahead of it on this technical thing like Ebola and West Nile diseases. And so because of the time factor, Representative Cannon has given this bill basically her number. And when it goes after this meeting, it's out on the web. It will be Dr. Price's bill, Jody Lott's on it, Henson, I am a signer and the top signer of it, and Representative Cannon, because I asked for it to be expanded and covering more diseases. So if you will, that the top of it is not correct, and it will be reflected when it goes out. So I just wanted to make that everybody know about that. And that was on because I requested it, because it had been expanded. I wanted to, if they were going to do this, I thought it did not need to cover just Zika, that we needed to look at a wider range of more technical type of illness, and like I say, need to be led, if at all possible, since we have physicians now, by a physician with that expertise. Representative Jaspers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Representative Price. On this, I guess I looked at this when I first read it a few minutes ago, that the CDC, this is their thing. And I don't see why. I guess I'm just questioning the need for this study committee when the Department of Community Health, it's their evaluation of the issue. They're the ones recommending changes. We're saying that they're not up on this and not doing. I mean, that's kind of the way I just.
No, obviously we can't reproduce the efforts of the CDC and Department of Public Health. That's not the point. The point is to take the information that they can make available to us and see if there's any legislative solutions that we can, be prepared to direct resources to either the care and treatment of these unfortunate babies or in the realm of prevention and reproductive services. As has been done in Florida and Texas.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Let's see that on line 19 of it about coming up with legislation. I mean, it seems like that there's so much medical information out there, and we really don't use the CDC enough and look at what they're doing when we are proposing legislation and all. So that's the purpose. Have I got other questions? Representative Reinders, you're on.
Madam Chair, just like we're trying to do Representative Brody's bill last time to make it broader to do what we want to do, I applaud your leadership and taking a look at it in a big picture, and therefore I motion do pass, always in the spirit of cooperation with R's and D's.
So, am I not going to ever be able to leave this committee again?
Well, there was allegations that were thrown last time when you weren't here, so.
I understand that. And as I've said many times, health issues, 99% of them are not Republican or Democrat. They're patient or Georgia citizens, and we try to look at it that way. And so I hope we don't get into that. Our committee has been great. I feel like I have the best committee going. We don't always agree with each other. We hash it out. We go back and forth on things. But I think 99% of the time, again, that we come up with really good solutions. So, and that the committee process, when allowed to work, works. And I am a big respecter of the legislative process and the committee process. So with that, I have a do pass. Do I have a second? I have a do pass and a second. Is there any other discussion from the committee members? Do we have anybody? I'm out of things. Anybody from the audience?
May I say one thing that
Sure.
Representative Cannon was extremely prolific in her providing information for this to happen. And if she wanted to say anything, I would offer that opportunity if we have the time.
She doesn't want to.
Okay, great.
Okay, Representative Sharper, you had something?
Thank you, Madam. So the information that we would get if we pass this through on the study committee didn't go directly to our community health departments as well. Is that part of the plan too?
there'll be some recommendation in the report, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak to this issue? Okay, seeing nobody. Everyone in the favor of the passage of House Resolution 464, say aye. Anyone opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much. See everybody on Thursday.